Welcome to the non-contracts part of contracts. That's right, we did contracts, now we're doing not contracts, even though this class is called contracts. So, what is not contracts? Essentially, promissory estoppel. That's our big term for the next 12 videos. There's going to be a lot of videos here. So, what is promissory estoppel? It's kind of like a unilateral contract, except it's not. So, right. Offer, acceptance, consideration. What is missing out of this to not make it a contract? The offer. That needs to be there. That's the promise in promissory estoppel. That's the thing that makes it a promise rather than a contractual offer, though. There's a little twist. Is that an offer usually has some sort of exchange to it, right? I offer to sell you this banana for $1. I need something that because this, I mean, I could be holding anything. I need a little more obvious symbol. Say my phone. Oh, banana. Okay, so I'll sell you this banana for $1. That's the agreement. That's the offer. No, that's the offer. Sorry. So offer, acceptance. Somebody needs to accept the offer. Sure. Consideration. You both, do the offer. Both ends of the offer has some sort of agreement, right? The $1 for the banana. That's the consideration. The offer is I'll give you the banana for $1, and the acceptance is either saying yes or giving me the $1. So a lot of these things can all get wrapped up. But that would not be a unilateral contract. That would be a bilateral contract because it's two separate promises. But so, in this case, right, we're looking at basically what is a unilateral contract where the person is saying, okay, if you do this, I'll do this. Or, I will do this. And then you really act on that, right? Good example, right? Remember the case where the uncle was like, hey, $10,000 if you don't smoke. By the way, just a quick note, why that case actually happened. A lot of these cases are will cases, and if you're the executor of the will and you fuck up the will, you have to pay it back to the estate. So a lot of the times, estate suits will go way too long, go way too crazy, because if you mess it up, you're liable. You want the estate to have to pay for everything. So if somebody is owed $10,000 from the estate that's not in the will, you better figure that out as the executor. So, all that being said, this case that we're going to be talking, again, so we're talking about liability in the absence of bargain for exchange, right? So no bargain, no contract is generally the rules. You need a promise to enforce a promise, but this promise can be implied, right? So, one thing that it's a little messy. So, promissory estoppel is based off the idea that you relied on a promise. That's basically what the foundation is. Promissory estoppel is when the court comes in and says, well, you relied on this promise, here's your remedy. So, reliance damages versus expectation damages. In a contract, you get both. What is expectation damages? If this contract went through, we would have made $10 billion this quarter. That's expectation. Reliance. I spent like $200 on trying to make sure that I lived up to the expectations. Or sorry, I spent $200 in reliance that this promise would be fulfilled. Right? Like I built a house on the land that I was expecting to get after I built a house. We'll get to that case eventually. Anyway, so what is this first case? Kirksey versus Kirksey. Man offers to let his brother's widow live on the land. She moves in, but he ends up kicking her out 2 years later. Court says there's no remedy because there's no consideration. This is very, very early, and this is before promissory estoppel. Kirksey versus Kirksey, which is just getting tacked in on the end here, not really the majority of this video. Kirksey versus Kirksey, it's not law anymore. Though it should also be noted that it likely the court would have ruled against the woman, even in this case, because she ultimately didn't rely on the promise. The promise, had she sold her land, then you might have had a problem, But she ends up moving without selling her land and kind of just farming on his land, And he kicks her off. She goes back and moves to her land, so no reliance damages. Obviously, there'd be some. Remember, the important thing to note: damages. A lot of the times, there's no foundational difference between no damages and actual damages. Sorry, no damages and $1 in damages or whatever. insignificant damages, right? There's no real foundational difference. So a lot of the times, in that case, for example, she probably would have gotten $1 or whatever for her inconvenience. But there really is very little foundational difference in my mind. I know ultimately to some clients that might matter, right? I want to make sure I'm found innocent. I don't care. I'm not giving that woman $1. Angry divorces. Good news is I don't plan on being a divorce attorney.